The movie begins with two criminals executing their plan before robbing a bank. While Stig stays in the diner, Bobby goes to the bank to learn how the flow works. He sees the manager going into the safe, so he talks to the teller who agrees to open one for him. He then approaches Stig in the diner, signaling him to do his part. While the waitress is busy making their orders, Stig goes to the back room and triggers the fire alarm, which disperses everyone. To make matters worse, he throws gasoline on the stove, and he and Bobby get out of the diner before the place catches fire and explodes. A week earlier, Bobby and Stig arrived at a ranch in Mexico to deliver 500 fake passports to a cartel. Before Bobby entered the house, he asked Stig to wait for him outside, and that's when Bobby noticed the head of a man named Little Toro in a bag. He was his friend. Soon after, Bobby meets the cartel himself, Papi Greco, who paid for the passports with $100,000 cash instead of cocaine. Ever since Papi Greco discovered Little Toro's betrayal, he has refused to accept any new customers, including the one who sent Bobby, sending Bobby into a tailspin for years of their friendship. Bobby returns the money and asks him to keep the passports, considering Papi Greco owes him the stuff. Meanwhile, Stig is angry to see chickens being used as target practice by Papi Greco's men, but Bobby calmed him down and showed him the bag containing Little Toro's head. Still, Stig isn't happy about it, so he grabs a gun and shows off his incredibly accurate shooting skills to the chickens. On their way back to the United States, Stig proposes to rob Papi Greco's money at the bank as revenge. It's estimated at $3 million. But Bobby won't talk about it, preferring to keep his business relationship with the cartel. When they arrive at the border crossing, border agents arrest them for failing to show travel documents. They are taken to the station and interrogated in separate rooms involving the DEA, Agent Jessup, and Agent Deb. Although the border agents know Bobby is connected to Papi Greco, Bobby refuses to talk without a lawyer, as does Stig, forcing the border agents to turn them both over to the DEA. It is soon revealed that Bobby is a DEA agent who has been undercover for 3 years in order to catch a distributor known as Little Toro. He doesn't tell Jessup that Little Toro is dead, and he refuses to quit the mission because he is also close to getting Papi Greco, who Jessup wants evidence on. Without complicating the situation, the boss gives him an extra 2 weeks to catch Little Toro. At that moment, Deb moves the ring to her thumb, meaning Bobby must meet her at the motel immediately. They have an affair. Although Deb often spent time with Bobby, Bobby never knew who Deb's boyfriend is. Bobby tells Deb that Little Toro is dead, but forbids her from telling their boss about it. Furthermore, he asks permission to accompany Stig to rob Papi Greco's money, so they can arrest the cartel for tax evasion. On the other hand, Bobby only sees Stig as a partner in crime, so he encourages Deb to arrest him in front of the bank so that she can get a medal, and Deb agrees. The next day, Bobby meets Stig at his house to express his agreement to rob the bank. The two then monitor the residence of Papi Greco's mistress, where they see his son and his mistress. Every 2 weeks, Papi Greco leaves Mexico for the US with a briefcase full of cash and spends a week at the house. And that day is today. When they see Papi Greco's man leaving with the bag, they follow him to the bank, which brings us back to the beginning of the story. The bank is across the street from the diner, so they decide to burn the place down to avoid witnesses and the lunch hour. Up until now, Stig still doesn't know that Bobby is a DEA agent. Later that night at the motel, Bobby tells Deb that the robbery is going to happen tomorrow, but Deb hasn't even discussed it with Jessup. Regardless, he asks Deb to have troops meet him outside the bank after he and Stig come out, and Deb agrees, prompting Bobby to return to his apartment, where he lives alone. Meanwhile, somewhere along the way, Stig meets 2 US Navy personnel, Commander Harold and Timo, who supply him with a bag of explosives. It turns out Stig is a soldier who is on a cross-border mission against the cartel on the orders of the Admiral, which Bobby doesn't know about. The next day, Stig and Bobby parked their car at the Target bank, but first with masks in hand, they went to the nearby police station to lock the officers in cells. Soon after, they enter the bank and ask everyone to sit on the floor at gunpoint. When one of the security guards tried to grab the gun, Bobby quickly stopped him. Stig then grabbed the key from the manager and went inside the safe, carefully attaching explosives to each box. In the next second, all the boxes exploded, surprising everyone. When Stig started collecting all the money, he found something wrong. It turned out that the money was not $3 million as they thought, but $43 million, all of which they took. Before they left, Bobby told the security to release the police officers in the station, expecting a shootout with the DEA forces. However, Deb is late, prompting Bobby to leave with Stig. They stopped in the desert, where a standoff ensued as they began to suspect each other of foul play. At that moment, Stig shot Bobby in the left shoulder and gave him a bottle of water. And that's when he found Bobby's badge, and learned that he is a DEA agent. However, Stig had a mission, so he left with all the money and Bobby's badge. Meanwhile at the bank, CIA Chief Earl expresses his disappointment to the bank manager, and it is soon revealed that the stolen money was theirs, not the cartel's. The investigation involves various federal agencies including the FBI. When Earl sees the burnt-out diner, he orders his agents to gather information from the waitstaff and every customer. At Navy bases, Harold applauds the success of Stig's mission, but he doesn't tell him who the $43 million belongs to. Stig informs him that Bobby is a DEA agent, but he doesn't care, considering Bobby is a dirty agent, and he has no mercy. However, when he learns that Bobby was left alive, he takes the group, including Stig, to search for him in the desert, not wanting to risk compromising his operation. Meanwhile, in the desert, Bobby encounters two plainclothes agents who ask him for documents, but he instead pulls a gun on them. He takes their buggy and drives away. After losing Bobby, Harold and the group attempt to execute Stig, who puts up a fight and quickly eludes them. He hides behind a rock, then steals one of their cars and escapes. Bobby arrives at the vet clinic and gets treatment from Dr. Ken, who often practices illegally. Dr. Ken is known to be selling Special K to college girls, so Bobby threatens to arrest him if he doesn't treat his wounds. That night, he meets Deb at the hotel to complain about her late arrival at the bank. He informs her about Stig and insists that they need to find him as soon as possible. He tells Deb to look into Stig's background while he will check his apartment. After seeing the buggy parked at the vet clinic, Earl interrogates Dr. Ken, but gets no information, so he grabs his gun and shoots him in the knee, revealing the DEA agent. Arriving at Stig's apartment, Bobby cautiously enters before hearing the phone ring. Unbeknownst to him, Stig is on the roof of another building, aiming a rifle at him and talking to him through the phone. Stig questions him about what he is doing in his apartment, but Bobby won't answer. When Bobby notices the military rifle Stig is using, Bobby asks him what the military is doing robbing a bank. At that moment, Timo and his friends come to kill Stig, prompting Bobby to turn off the electricity and hide behind the curtains. As the soldiers enter, Bobby evades them with Stig's voice guidance on another phone. In the silence, Stig shoots Timo, allowing Bobby to escape the room, and Stig also leaves the roof. Meanwhile, Earl visits Jessup at his house, accusing him and Bobby of being the ones who stole his dirty money. However, Jessup has no idea what he is talking about. Unbeknownst to them, Bobby has arrived outside the house, intending to confront Jessup. He calls Deb, who informs him that Stig is a clean soldier. Despite this, Bobby is determined to get answers from Jessup about who the money belongs to. As he enters the house, an agent attacks him, and Earl shoots Jessup as he tries to fight back, breaking up the fight. Jessup is near death. Earl then interrogates Bobby, asking who in the DEA gave him the authority to rob their bank. However, Bobby can't give him any answers, and he doesn't know where the money is. In fact, he doesn't even know who Earl is. Frustrated, Earl grabs Bobby's gun and shoots Jessup dead. He threatens Bobby that he will take Jessup's death to the federal office unless he brings him the money so he can get away clean, and Bobby agrees. Earl gave him his business card and let him go. In the morning, Bobby confronts Papi Greco at his house, demanding answers at gunpoint. But before he could give an answer, Stig came crashing into the Papi Greco's men, knocked him unconscious. He puts the cartel in the back of his car, and he refuses to give Bobby the keys. When Papi Greco's men open fire, Stig escapes, and the shooter falls again before Bobby follows Stig. They race and crash into each other until they end up in the desert, where Stig refuses to pull over. A short time later, they decide to fight, provoking them to stop the car and start beating each other up. They roll around in the dust, locking necks and getting exhausted, forcing them to stop the fight. They eventually reveal their true identities, but they still don't understand how they're a team. Since they both need answers, they work together again, taking the cartel to Deb's garage and interrogating him. It is soon revealed that the money they stole was Papi Greco's payment to the CIA. They take 7% of his criminal business earnings. In return, Papi Greco is allowed to transport his goods across the border using their plane, and they do the same for the other cartels. A little later, Deb comes in and scolds Bobby for doing it in her garage. That's when Stig finds out that Deb and Bobby are dating and tries to comment on their relationship, but Bobby tells him to go back to the garage. Bobby then explains to Deb that he had to work with Stig again because he had no other choice. Jessup is dead, the money they stole belonged to the CIA, and now they want it back. He apologizes for involving her. In the garage, Stig fights Harold, who suddenly arrives, causing the cartel to flee. When Bobby checks the garage, no one is there, but then Stig breaks through the window into the house. Amidst Harold's gunfire, the three run out of the house, then escape in Deb's car. Meanwhile, Papi Greco manages to steal a woman's phone and her car. As he drives away, he calls his men, ordering them to find the three. Bobby, on the other hand, demands an answer from Deb on how Harold knew where to come from. Bobby knows that Deb is hiding something from him, but before she can answer, a truck rams their car from the side, instantly stopping them. A moment later, they are approached by Papi Greco's men, who bring Stig and Bobby before him. He reminds Bobby of their friendship before ordering his men to take them to his house. The next day at the ranch, Papi Greco hangs Bobby and Stig upside down to exact some painful revenge. He releases his prided bull and lets it run over the two of them. However, Stig offers him a deal. The $43 million of CIA money they stole will be returned to him if he lets them go. Stig also said that the money was with Commander Harold at the Navy Air Base. Knowing this, Papi Greco became even more eager to kill them both, but his actions are interrupted by the arrival of a guest. It's Earl. He had come specifically to ask for his help in finding Stig and Bobby and the money they stole. Referring to the large reward that Papi Greco expected, Earl reminded him who gave him the freedom to do business. Earl gave him nothing. After Earl left, Papi Greco decided to free Stig and Bobby and gave them clean shirts. He accepted their offer. To return to the United States, he had his men accompany the duo across the northern part of the border, giving the duo 24 hours to get the money. He showed them the warehouse containing Deb, who was being held hostage, assuring Bobby not to betray him. Papi Greco stated that if they didn't get the money within the time he had specified, he would come looking for them. Soon after, their journey began. They crossed the desert until sunset, then crossed a rapid river at night. Upon arriving in the United States, the duo enter a parking lot to steal a car, then drive to a repair shop where they get a gun from Stig's friend. With everything ready, the duo drives straight to the base and recklessly crashes through the entrance gate and part ways. While Bobby searches for Harold's office, Stig breaks into the office's dining room and meets with Admiral Two-Way. He informs him about the CIA's illegal fund heist that he carried out under the Admiral's false orders, asking him to block the base and arrest Harold, but the Admiral refuses. Two-Way doesn't want to tarnish the integrity of the Navy just because of one corrupt personnel. Instead, he decides to bury the case and assume Harold and Stig went AWOL during the operation. He orders the soldiers to expel Stig, banning him and Harold from all military bases in the world. Meanwhile, Bobby meets with Harold in his office, who he already knows is Deb's boyfriend. He presses Harold to tell him where the money is, but he refuses, forcing Bobby to intimidate him. It is soon revealed that Deb was the one who first found out where the CIA hid the money. When Harold tells Deb he knows how to get away with the money, they hatch a plan to steal it. That's how Bobby and Stig meet, but the money is no longer at the base, but at Deb's. At that moment, a soldier comes upon them, urging Bobby to leave, triggering an emergency alarm with an evacuation order. Bobby quickly runs to the wardrobe room and steals a white Navy uniform, then cuts the gas line in the kitchen. In a separate room, he throws a fire that causes a massive explosion, burning the entire building. After things calm down, Bobby comes out wearing the stolen uniform and runs into a smirking Stig. Meanwhile, Deb is starting to lose hope as the duo are running out of time. She assures Papi Greco that Bobby won't be coming, and hints that the robbery was part of her and Harold's plan. However, Papi Greco doesn't care. He just wants to know where the money is, which Deb refuses to tell him at all costs. Papi Greco then calls Bobby to remind him of his tardiness, and lets him talk to Deb one last time. Although Bobby tries to accept Deb's lie, she refuses to tell him where the money is. She lets the phone connect, moving the ring on her finger, before getting shot in the head. Deb isn't saved, sending Bobby into a tailspin. Afterwards, the duo meet at the garage where they get nothing. The Admiral refuses to follow up on the case while Harold gives the money to Deb, and she is killed by the cartel. They get into an argument because Bobby refuses Stig's invitation, who decides to go back to Mexico to kill everyone involved. Stig insists that his shots never miss. When Bobby arrives at his apartment, he finds Deb dead. He sits on the balcony to reflect, and that's when he gets a small clue. He sees Deb's ring on her thumb, prompting him to head to the motel where he and Deb used to meet. He searches the bed, and finds all the money was there the whole time. With that, he immediately calls Earl to collect on his offer, then makes a plan with Stig. The next day at the ranch, Stig mediates a deathmatch between Papi Greco, Harold, and Earl. There are no rules. The last one alive gets the money. Bobby then arrives with the car containing the money, and gives the keys to Earl as collateral for his and Stig's freedom. As the duo walk away, Bobby blows up the car, triggering a gunfight, with Papi Greco getting the first shot. Earl's helicopter takes off as the duo hide behind a wall, while Harold eliminates Papi Greco's men. Reaching the barn, Stig shoots the pilot dead, crashing the helicopter on the spot, but then the duo find themselves in a sticky situation. Earl holds Bobby at gunpoint, and Harold holds Stig at gunpoint. In a fit of confidence, the duo shoot each other's hostages, saving both of them. The duo then return to Papi Greco's yard, end the cartel's misery, and leave, leaving the money to the locals. Just to be fair, Bobby shoots Stig in the leg in return for shooting him earlier, and then they head back to the States. The next day, a mysterious two men deposit their ton of money at the bank. Unbeknownst to them, Bobby and Stig are watching them inside the diner. Apart from them, Stig is excited to learn that Bobby still has a few $1,000,000 stashed away somewhere, which Stig hopes to split with him. The movie ends here. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed the recap. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.